I wonder if the way that puzzles are typically used in D&D, it's like following in the tradition of puzzles in D&D almost comes from like riddles. Like, people are looking through like old dungeons and even some new dungeons. And uh, personally, I'm not a big fan of riddles. Yeah, and I'm really curious about that problem, John, because I hear that and you know, I'm always curious what's the cause of that sort of stuff, because I think that puzzles can be great. They're not for every group, but even as I say that, um, so for instance, like last in preparation for this puzzle that I'm trying to design here, uh, T in the community suggested that I play a free PDF game called 12 Word Searches, which you can find that video from last week, or I'd recommend it if you like puzzles. It's a pretty neat little thing, and it does a really good job of taking a simple puzzle and kind of letting it unfold and expand into more and more complex things, which is great. But I was mildly disappointed to get to the end of the game, to get to the end of the set of puzzles, and it kind of was just a bare mechanic. There was really nothing more to it, and I think that that reflects a little bit on how puzzles are used in tabletop games. Like if a puzzle is basically used to open a door, or if a puzzle is used to open a chest, or if a puzzle is used to solve an encounter or some other dungeony thing, that's fine. But I wonder how players would engage if a puzzle did. I always think of it in like three different ways. Obviously, the puzzle has to be engaging in its own right. Nobody wants a boring puzzle. That matters, and the game I played last week had that. Second, I think it has to engage narratively with the game world. Like it has to teach something about the world that you couldn't have learned except by doing this puzzle. A good example might be if the players intercept some letters, and baked into those letters are hidden messages. Solving that puzzle is going to inform them about secrets between these people, maybe introduce them to some new story elements that they weren't aware of. That's going to make that puzzle more exciting. And the third thing, so first is the mechanic should, like, there should be it should be a fun puzzle to solve, and that we can dive into what that means. Second, it should have a narrative component, and I think third, I think it's usually smart to have some sort of mechanics based reward. It could be just as simple as items. It could be loot. It could be something that they are able to use, like a one time use ability or something like that. Like there should be something that they gain from it, because to some extent, I wonder if the way that puzzles are typically used in D&D, it's like following in the tradition of puzzles in D&D almost comes from like riddles. Like, people are looking through like old dungeons and even some new dungeons. And uh, personally, I'm not a big fan of riddles. But if they just kind of operate on kind of one of these areas, then I think players can see them as something that just kind of slows things down. But if they see it as something that offers potentially some boon, some benefit to their party, but also a way to learn about the world and lore information, maybe that gives more things to engage players with. That's my like working theory. That's I'm really curious when I sort of finish and feel like I'm kind of ready for prime time with any of my puzzle ideas. I'll be really curious to see if people can find any can make any progress with groups that maybe were not inclined to like puzzles before. Because I think if they're deployed, I almost want to, like, when you say that, it's like I want to help groups like that and be like, okay, let's find out. Let's come up with a puzzle to give to that group and see if we can turn them around on it. See if we can engage them maybe with it. But maybe not. Time will tell, I think. Sooner or later, I'll get one of these things out the door. Promise. And not just telling myself that. Under, you found a cool puzzle. You think you make it to a block puzzle or a maze pretty well. Let me check it out. Yeah, I really don't like riddles. That said, I did find a fun way to use riddles once. Only once have I ever used them in my games. I'll have to take a look back at that encounter again and see why I liked it. Yeah, John. So I am prototyping a puzzle book for an artificer in my game, and really I'm creating the pages that I can sort of then use to, test out some ideas. But the basic premise is things like this. So this is basically Sudoku with letters. But if you solve it, there's a message, and the idea is to sort of use this as a simulacrum for as a stand-in for deciphering blueprints. And I've already kind of tested this with the player. I've run this a couple different times or I've run this another time before with a tinkerer, and so then using this kind of little notebook that I picked up relatively cheap, I want to test out and see if I can make like a notebook of these, and most importantly, take the core idea, and make it more advanced. Like, how can I break it down and make it harder as you go, to the point that it actually feels like you're sort of solving more and more complex blueprints. And then solving them would basically equate to sort of unlocking things that you can craft. And I've got some ideas for ways to enable that too. But that's the big idea. Right now I'm endlessly cutting pages. Yeah, but that's where I'm going with it. And I should say, like, I'm also like, this type of puzzle is sort of outside of my typical style, because usually I'm wanting to base a puzzle on the type of thing that would actually be used by people to hide things, to disguise things, and this is a little bit more laid bare than I normally like. But we'll see what it ends up with. This is where it's starting. Let's see where I'll see where it ends up. I'm optimistic about how it will turn out.